I am so excited to introduce this panel to you and hear some of these American Dream stories over the next year. We're going to be talking a lot about the American Dream and interviewing a lot of governors and a lot of you in this audience and people that have lived their American Dream around the country. But so excited to spend this time with you gentlemen. You've got amazing stories, and I know all of us are so excited to learn a little bit more about what has made the man and how did you get to these points, and just to inspire me and all the young people that are watching and learning about our stories. And so Wes, why don't we start with you, and if you don't mind, share a little bit about what's made Wes Moore and Governor Wes Moore and your American Dream story.
Yes, sir. And first, I just want to say what an honor it is and how excited we are as an organization to have you taking the helm, Kevin. Your leadership just continues to inspire us, and being able to take the lead on reigniting the American dream is exactly what this country needs right now. So congratulations on behalf of the entire organization. Thank you. Thank you. And to John and to Jim, this is it's an honor to be on stage with you both, and you're going to be just fine. You got two Army folks surrounding you as a Marine. So
this is my American dream.
This is your American dream. And you know, I'm honored because, you know, to understand my American dream, you actually have to understand the American dream of James Joshua Thomas, who is my grandfather. Because my grandfather was actually the first one in this country who was, my first one in my family who was born in this country, where he was born in South Carolina. And his father, my great-grandfather, Josiah, was a minister. And he was a very vocal minister. That he was a minister who didn't just preach the word of God, but he was a minister who wanted people to act accordingly as well. And he got a lot of attention, and not just from his parishioners, but he started getting a lot of attention from the Ku Klux Klan. And he started getting threats. Eventually, those threats led him to, in the middle of the night, picking up his family. And in the middle of the night, he picked up his family and left. And they did not just leave South Carolina, they left the United States. And for much of my family, they always pledged to never come back to the United States. And many members of my family have not. That's why I still have a lot of family members still in Jamaica. But my grandfather, he did. Where he always said in all of his humility, this country would be incomplete without him. And so he came back to the United States. He went to Lincoln University, which is an HBCU in Pennsylvania. And eventually he became a minister, just like his father. And what was interesting was that when he became a minister, the same threats that were coming to his father started coming to him. But he stuck. And he stayed in this country and devoted the rest of his life to the Lord. He devoted the rest of his life to his family. He devoted the rest of his life to his community. He devoted the rest of his life to his grandson, who saw my father as I saw my father die in front of me when I was 3 years old. I was a young man who had handcuffs on my wrist by the time I was 11. I was a young man who joined the Army when I was 17. In fact, I was too young to join the Army by myself. My mother had to sign the paperwork for me. But I always say after my teenage years, she signed whatever paperwork the Army put in front of her. And he helped to raise a young man who just 2.5 years ago became the 63rd governor of the state of Maryland and the first black governor in the history of the state. So the reason I love the idea of reigniting the American dream is, for me, the American dream is never a singular dream. It's a continuation. It's a dream that was born generations ago. It's a dream that was born by people who, even if they did not know us, that they fought for the hope of us. And that American dream, the ability that we are here living out an extraordinary life in an extraordinary country, and something, and frankly, the most unique country. The United States is the most unique experiment in the history of the world, period and full stop. And I'm thankful that there were people who were willing to work and use their American dream that in many ways helped me to realize my own.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And Lieutenant Colonel John Ballinger, an Oklahoman, and and then obviously we saw the video of you being Marine One pilot for 2 U.S. presidents, but kind of take us back and tell us a little bit more about your story and what inspired you and what made you who you are today.
You know, when I think about the American dream, I look at a couple pictures that are hanging in my office. And the first one is me as a 7-year-old boy. I'm looking up at an Air Force pilot sitting in his F-5. And I've got a helmet on and the parachute, almost as if I'm projecting myself into that cockpit years later. You know, on the other side of those two pictures is a picture where I had the ability to fly President Trump past Mount Rushmore, July 3rd, 2020. And then the other picture on the other side is of me on my last landing with President Biden in the South Lawn just 3 years ago. And when I look at those pictures, I could say that was the American dream. I projected it's done. There's nothing left. But when I look at those pictures, I also believe that the true dream was lived in between and now carrying on. Because in between those years, you know, I grew up in a home where my father told me I was not a great student, and to be a great pilot, you had to be good at math. Well, guess what? The one thing I wasn't good at was math, all through my education. Horrible. And that was repeated time and time again, and I didn't see the outcome because I thought, I can't be a pilot. You know, and in between that story, my wife and I, we both grew up in abusive, broken homes. But yet, here we are, 17 years later, married, faithfully, happily, even with 4 deployments sprinkled in there to cause a little bit of chaos. You know, when we were stationed in Hawaii, we spent 86 days with our daughter in the NICU at one of the most important points of my career at the time. And we spent 86 days with her before we lost her. And that could have been the end, but we've got 2 boys on both sides of her birth that are thriving and know that God's in control and He's faithful. And then, you know, when I got out thinking I'm a one-trick pony, I've done my thing, my service has been served, but I was only really good at one specialty. I was able to get out, start a commercial real estate development company, start a coaching company. I did a little speaking on the side, and now I'm selling private jets for individuals and corporations. So it's proof that you can still thrive beyond the circumstances that you're presented with or the house that you were raised in. And for me, it was the faith, family, a loving spouse, supportive kids, even when I was walking out the door. It was pastors, my church community, and mentors that said things like, continue to raise the bar, or be brilliant in the basics, James Mattis, or set priorities and keep them. My priorities are God, my family, everything else. And if I can keep those, I'll be successful. And so looking at those pictures, it just means to me that the American dream can be exactly what you want it to be, as little as you want it to be, or as big as you want it to be. And it can stop whenever you want it. But I'm choosing not to stop.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Beautiful.
Well, Jim, kind of tell us a little bit about your story. We've become friends, and I just admire you so much, everything you've done in business. Entrepreneurs have always been heroes of mine as I was growing up in business, and then now what you're doing to give back. I just want to hear a little bit about your upbringing and kind of your story and journey and what got you to this point right now in life.
Okay, well, listening to your two stories is very compelling, and there's similarities. So I graduated high school in 1968, and there was a war going on called the Vietnam War. I think they called it a conflict, and I was a horrible student. So if there were 600 kids that graduated in that class, I was 601. So I went with my father, and I knew I was going to get drafted, so I signed up in the Army. And so I get inducted, I go into the Army, and I became a medic. And I went overseas, as so many people did at that time. And there was a moment, a pivotal moment of growing up where I was working with an Army nurse, an RN, who was in World War II, the Korean War, and now in this war. And I was not maybe living up to my potential or doing the best job that I could. And she took me aside and she said, "You can do better. You have the ability to do better, and you need to do better because what you're doing is serious business," because there was life and death going on and those interactions when I was in the military. And so at that point, that was very pivotal for me, where I met a person who I really admired. She was correct in what she said, and that really changed my outlook on what I was doing. So, I've been on this journey, a journey, and I've been very fortunate. So I came back, I went to school. It was challenging, but I went to college as you were doing things, and then I decided to go to graduate school. And I had unbelievable experiences doing that, getting a couple of degrees and a master's in business and social work. And, I learned a lot. So I was going through this journey. And my wife, we were very young. We've been married for 47 years. A friend of ours came to us and said, "Hey, I have this little business on the side. I make mattresses and box springs." And so she started doing this because she was commuting back and forth, and we would see each other for 4 days. And I didn't realize that I married an entrepreneurial genius. And, it was 5 beds a week, and then she had a little storefront, 10 beds, and it was like 40 beds, selling to college campuses. She was a brilliant designer, an architectural designer, and we started a business in St. Louis. And it started thriving and becoming a well-known business. We got some breaks from some unbelievable industries there. Anheuser-Busch was one of them. They were, at that time, headquartered in St. Louis. And we just kept on going. And then journeys continued with this. I had a friend. He was not happy in what he was doing in his business. And he came to me because I was sitting on the board of directors of a bank at that time, and he wanted to get a loan. He was a good guy, but he was very leveraged. And we said, "Can't loan you money," but I gathered some guys and we invested in the business. And we called it at that time St. Louis Bread Company. If you're from St. Louis, there was a colloquial term called Breadco. And then we realized when we tried to expand in other places that we couldn't call it that, so we called it Panera's. And then, I was lucky to get involved in other businesses, the mortgage business with Nexstar Financial, and all these, about 4 businesses we sold to national companies, whether it was Bank of America or we went public with Panera's. And so it's been a journey. And I'm almost out of time, but the thing is that I decided to get involved with Gary Sinise, who is an actor. He started a foundation. I was with him at the beginning. I like building businesses and working. I love to work. sorry, but that's, I really like working. And so been working with that and also Travis Mills Foundation. And we really have expanded the community of those two nonprofits. And so giving back is, my greatest joy in life besides my family. So that's my story.
Well, thank you. We all see the success that you've had at this point. And I'm thinking about if you're a high school kid or a middle school kid or someone in our states that are looking at you now, we know that success is not always a straight path up and to the right? I mean, there's ups and downs and challenges. And one quote that I love, America's pastor, Billy Graham, he would say that, mountaintops are for views and inspiration, but fruit is grown in the valleys. So I always remind kids, don't wish away those valley experiences that are pruning you and getting you ready for that next challenge. And so can you share with us maybe some of those challenges or hardships, or did you ever think about quitting? Kind of take us back to the moment in whether it's middle school or high school or college or maybe after college when business isn't going well or family or life, or one of those challenges that you had to overcome, and love to hear from each of you on that.
I'll go. I remember, when I had some issues when I was coming up, and my mother had been threatening me to send me away to military school for years, and she'd always say, get it together. I'm sending you to military school. I'm like, all right, Mommy, I know. And then she started giving me brochures to show me she wasn't playing around. And so I look at the brochures. I'm like, all right, Mommy, I'll work harder. And then one day she came up to me and she's like, no, I'm gonna send you away. And I said, I know, Mommy, I told you I'm gonna work harder. And she's like, nah, you're going next week. And she started packing my stuff up. And I thought we would just like drive around the block a few times, like some kind of scared straight measure. And she drove all the way to Pennsylvania and sent me to a military school in Pennsylvania. And I was very clear to anyone who would listen to me that I'm not staying here. And in the first 4 days, I ran away 5 times, where they had these big black gates that surrounded the school, and every time they would turn their back, I would just run out, and they would find me. And the second and last time I tried to run away, they actually drew me a map on how to get to the train station, because it was so pathetic that I kept on getting lost. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, they found me in the middle of the woods, like crying, because I was hearing all these noises and I couldn't figure out where I was going, and I didn't realize that the map was fake. The map literally took me to the middle of the woods. They just enjoyed watching a flashlight doing this. And they brought me back to campus, and they allowed me to make one phone call, because it was during PLEAP system. So you guys know, like, no outside communication. But they said, if we don't make an exception, we're gonna lose them. So they said, Moore, you've got 5 minutes. Call whoever you want, we don't care. You got 5 minutes. And I called the only number that I knew, which was my mom. And so my mom picked up the phone at 1 o'clock in the morning. She's like, are you okay? I'm like, Mommy, I'm good. Thank you so much. Like, can you come get me right now? I'll do whatever you need me to do. And I'm going off in this whole diatribe. And finally she stops me and she says, too many people have sacrificed for you to be there. And too many people believe in you. And you have to understand it's not all about you. And when the 5 minutes ended, they took the phone back, they hung it up, they sent me back up to my room. And I'd be lying if I said anything changed that night, because it did not. But eventually I got a better understanding of what she was talking about. That we're never alone in this journey. And that in many ways, even the most complicated and difficult times, it goes back to the old poem when there were no more footprints and you thought that was the moment that God left you. It's like, no, that's the moment that God was carrying you. And that became really important, because I think it was something that I thought back on every single difficult moment that I've had since, even still to this day, where I feel like it was moments like that have trained us to where there's nothing anymore that I see in life that ever makes me flinch, because we're now built differently. And I think that was even that moment at 13, 14 years old, was still to this day a moment that I think back on and lean on, about that time to remember that you are just built differently. And so that means you need to move accordingly.
Oh, that's great.
All right. Well, when I got out of the Army and I went to school, I knew I was not a prepared student, but the one thing that we discovered when I was in the military is that I have a photographic memory. So I was able to use that, and I found out too that I was really good in economics, I got it, and statistics like math. And so they say that if you're good in those fields or physics, you're a little bit different. So I was able to get through school, pretty well. But then I decided when I went to graduate school, I was really among some really smart young men and women. I mean, they were at the top of their game. A lot of them came from Ivy League schools, and I struggled to keep up with them. I really did. I was not prepared in that situation, so I had to learn how to go to school. And there were times, like in the first semester, I'm going, you know what? I'm just not going to do this. I don't think I'm qualified to do this. But then I said, well, I'll finish this first semester. And then you finish the first semester and you go, well, you know what? I'll try the second semester. And then, so what I learned is I had to get better. I just had to get better. I went back and I was thinking about the Army nurse that I talked about earlier, where I just said, okay. So I pushed forward, into both of these programs, and I made it through the program. There were times when my wife and I started the business that we were in, I'm going, oh, this is several years ago. I can go out and work for a major corporation and get more money and have an expense account and do better, because there were just times where we're going, why are we doing this? But we have a motto on our household, and we've kind of facilitated it out: never give up, never quit. Never give up, never quit. So push forward. And one other time, we opened up a restaurant, St. Louis Bread Company, and the reaction of this restaurant and people coming to it was amazing. There was like 1,000 people lined up to come to this opening, and we were willfully unprepared. We didn't know that there was going to be that many people. And I participated working, and I remember giving a lot of meals for free because we just did not implement the way we needed to. And I'm going, maybe we should stop here. But that evening, we all got together. We reviewed what we were not doing correctly, went back out the next day, started all over again. So whenever I had those moments, I've been very fortunate where I've had people in my life kind of lift me up, or I looked at myself in the mirror and said, go back, tomorrow's another day.
That's awesome. Did you invent the baked potato soup inside the bread bowl? Is that your invention?
No, that was not mine. Not mine. But, it turns out the guy that started this was a real food genius, and that's a story unto itself, So
what I'm hearing from both of your stories is, number one, it's you would not be here had you quit, given up. And sometimes young people, they're going through those challenges in college, and it's good to hear people from your point of view, if you'll rewind back to college, and they can take some inspiration off of that you had to get better. So I love that. John?
Well, I'm going to mirror what these two gentlemen said, and it's perseverance, or as my wife would say, stubbornness. But it's also the blessing of having the right people come along at the right time.
Amen.
And speak into my life. I already said that I was horrible at math. And I thought, flying wasn't in the cards. But I had teachers that would step out and say, you know what? You are horrible at math, but if you just keep trying, you can get a little better. When going through, about to join the Marine Corps, my dad looked over my shoulder at some pamphlets laying on a table and said, what do you think you're doing? And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to join the Marine Corps because I think that's going to answer some questions and give me some freedom and let me travel. And he said, yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. Well, right then, that opposition taught me to keep pressing. When my wife and I lost our child, our daughter, 83%, 87% of marriages fail when there's a death of a child. But the right people stepped in. The right men that I had around me watching guard stepped in and said, John, this is not going to define you. This is not the time. And they were really there at an amazing time. And then, as I got to leave the Marine Corps and thought I was going to go out and find the next thing, well, it didn't come easy. In fact, it was some of our lowest days. Some of the lowest days where I was leaving that mountaintop and looking at other mountaintops that I thought were achievable, but I forgot that the mountaintop that I got on, I had to climb up. It was an arduous climb to get to that place, and I forgot that to get to the next one, you got to go back down, hit the valley, and then start climbing back up. And I'd forgotten that. But yet I had mentors speak into my life. And that's truly what I feel helped me with my persistence. And I can't thank the men that I had. I call them my 5 pillars. 3 individuals that gave me jobs through college, and then 2 pastors in Tulsa that I now call my 5 pillars. They're the men that spoke into my life that allowed me to keep strong when I didn't know anything else.
So good. Did you said you mentioned your dad had said, well, we'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah.
Does that motivate you? I mean, you just say, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. Is that something that you got challenged by?
Yeah, that's usually what it is. It's usually when somebody says, no, you can't.
Yeah.
Or that's for somebody else to do.
Yeah.
Or you don't fit the mold to do this.
Yeah, when I decided to run for governor, I had no political experience. I'd never ran for any office before, and I went and told one of our U.S. senators, not our U.S. senators today, but a previous one. I said, I'm going to run for governor. And there were 10 people in the race, and some, lieutenant governor, big mayor of the big city, and all that. He said, there's no possible way you can win. Okay. I thought he's going to be my first phone call when I win this thing. But sometimes those people that challenge you, it just kind of something inside you comes up and says, all right, that makes you want to do it even more. Any thoughts on people that have challenged you or said you can't do something that really inspired you? You wanted to prove them wrong?
Well, it's funny for me where I think at every stage there have been people who have told us that we can't do something, that it's not our time, that we hadn't waited our turn, I have lost count about the amount of people that have told me what I can't do. But what's really interesting for me is that they're actually not the ones that motivate me, because I actually forget about them pretty quickly. Where I think that the times in my life that have really stuck with me have not been when I was proving people wrong. It was when I was proving people right. It's the people who, despite all odds, did believe in you. That despite all evidence that what was possible, because we actually were in the same boat where I had never run for office before in my life. I had no political experience. I don't come from a political family. I say when I told members of my family that I was going to run for governor, I had to convince them to vote for me. And it's not that we're not cool, my family and I are cool, but for many members of my family, I had to convince them to vote, because that's just not our culture. We're not political in that way. And so there were, kind of to your point, I remember my first poll, I was polling at 1%. I'm not voting was polling higher than Westmore. So there was not a probability of any stretch that this thing was going to be a real thing. And so you're absolutely right. The amount of people that said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, it was countless. But I couldn't tell you about one of them. But I could tell you about every single person who said, go for it, and I'll stand with you. Even if this thing goes down in a blaze of glory, I'll still stand with you. And so I kind of feel where it's the people that I was trying to prove wrong are kind of fleeting. The people that I was trying to prove right, those are the ones that are eternal to me.
So good, so good. You know, our country, everybody, I mean, we've termed this American dream, right? And we have, obviously, immigration is a huge national conversation that we all talk about. People want to come to our country. What do you think it is unique about? Well, first off, is the American dream available in other countries? Is it just unique to our country? Why are people wanting to come here to chase the American dream? What's unique about our country that's different than other folks?
Well, first of all, I've been blessed to travel all over the world, been in several different countries and cultures and societies, and in so many of them too, I've really, admired the people that I was interacting with. But there is something unique about our country. So I'm listening to all these stories here. We were told 1980, that people who were, maybe you could think back then, we had interest rates that were 21%. Anybody in the room remember that 21% interest rates? So if you were going to get a mortgage, it was at 21%. And so we were told, my wife and I were, well, you can't start a business. This is the worst time to start a business. There's really high unemployment. But the word no to me is not a good word. No is not an acceptable word my whole life. Like, no, that's not going to happen. So, we started. And each business that we went into and the model, we had so many people that said, don't do this. This is not the right time. And pretty much like what you're talking about, I would kind of dismiss that and think more on the positive side about what we wanted to do. But I want to talk about the American dream. Anybody that thinks today in our country, that the American dream is over or dead, they're highly delusional. They are highly delusional. And I can give so many stories, but I know though, sometimes my wife would say there's something wrong with me because I'll be watching people work. I'll watch them. So like if I'm at a restaurant and I'm going, did they do this correctly? Did they bust that table? And so a good part of the year I live in Florida in a place called Marco Island. And there's a guy who's from Bangladesh who started a restaurant. He was a bus, he bussed tables, and then he was a waiter. And then he opened up his little restaurant, and I would just watch this guy. And, he came to this country with a dream, and now he owns 2 thriving restaurants. And I watched this guy work his rear end off, a smart guy, and he took advantage of everything in this country. And he would not let any barrier get in his way, whether it was race or his ethnicity. He just kept on going. So I've been witness to so many people about people today can go to a community college for 3 semesters and you can get a certification, a degree as an RN. So we're short in our country as an RN. This way you don't have to go into debt in so many universities that are great, where the community colleges in the United States, a lot of them are for free. And just imagine, and I know 2 ladies, 2 young women, who went to school. They wouldn't have been able to afford to go to college, or they would have had to take out loans. They wanted to become nurses, RNs, and they took advantage of that program. And they did that and then went on to graduate school. So there's so many opportunities in this country. And whatever your dream is, if you're a firefighter, a first responder, and you want to give and live your dream doing that, if you want to go into the ministry, whatever it is that you do. And I don't like judging people by the albatross of how much money they make or how successful they are financially. I care more about what they do and what they've contributed, to society and the country of what they're doing. But the American dream is alive and well in this country.
Amen. Yeah. And then earlier we were talking to the economist, and Governor Polis had them up here, and Laffer said the same thing. He's 85 years old, worked in the Reagan administration, said he's never been more optimistic about our country right now, and we don't see that on the news channels. And so I think it's important that we hear stories like that. So are you going to invest in that restaurant, those 2 restaurants, and blow that up too? And from Marco Island?
No, I'm not going to be in the restaurant business. But the truth of the matter is that there are tremendous opportunities economically in this country. And, it is tremendous the way we have set up our structure, our banking system, how we do business in this country with the values, is that you can do business with people that you trust and have credibility. And what I've learned dealing internationally, not every country, not every society, when they say they're going to do X, they don't do X. They just don't do it. So just the opportunities right now in this country are tremendous. I see them, and I'm still investing in them heavily.
Yeah, please, Wes, what do you think is it about America?
Yeah, and I think it is important to that we can't lose sight that immigration is still part of the American genius. Yes. Right? I mean, that is one of kind of the unique features of the United States, is that this is a country of immigrants. Yep. This is a country that was literally built on immigration. And we were talking about it because I agree with both aspects of what was said this morning, where as Dr. Lafleur was saying how he's excited about the future of this country, as am I. And I also agree with what Dr. Furman was saying, was that immigration is helping to drive the economic growth that we're seeing inside this country. In fact, that's leading the measurements of economic growth. And it's interesting because as governors, this is something that we deal with every single day, where immigration for me, it's a very personal issue because I come from a family of immigrants. It's an issue that we all agree that it's a broken system that we have within the United States right now. And we know that the solution to making sure we can get it done is we have to make sure we have a secure border. We have to make sure that we are removing violent offenders from our communities, and we have to make sure that we have a humane way of offering pathways to citizenship for people. There's a collective agreement that this is where we need to get to. We just need to make sure we have the political will to get there. Because as governors, the challenging thing is, as governors, there is no governor who controls immigration policy, right? There is no immigration policy for Oklahoma. There's no Maryland immigration policy. We just simply have to respond to what the federal policy is. And oftentimes as governors, we then have to deal with the residue. We deal with the debris that comes from a broken system. And so I can't think of something that again, it is our hope and it is our plea and it is our ask of Washington, take this seriously. Because we need to have a sustainable immigration system within our states for our states to continue to grow and thrive. And in the state of Maryland, our #1 industry is agriculture, by far. And you cannot talk about the growth of the agricultural industry in the state of Maryland without immigration. You can't talk about the growth of our construction industry in the state of Maryland without immigration. We also need to make sure we have a system that works. And so we're not just continuing to be responsive, reflective, and frankly, having to deal with challenges that none of us have the budgets for. And I know we've spoken about this offline, where if Washington's interested, we have ideas on things that we could do to be able to, in a bipartisan fashion, be able to fix this system. But I just really hope that Washington understands we have got to get this done. And there's ways to get it done, but we just can't wait. Because as governors, we just continue dealing with the consequences of the fact that we continue to have a broken system within this country.
Well, on immigration, me and you talked at dinner the other night,
Yeah.
and we said we can fix it.
We can fix it.
If the governors controlled the workforce permits, and because we're closer to, in your state, agriculture or construction, and in Tennessee, if we had the ability to match employers with employees and make sure that they had that contract to work, that's what other countries do. I think we could fix that. Obviously, we have to have a secure border. We're so happy that that's done now, and get rid of the illegal, or get rid of the criminal element.
Yep.
But we should match employers with employees, and totally agree with you on that.
And we can help with that.
Yeah.
The states can help.
We sure can. John?
Yeah. Well, I'll bring it back down to more tactical level. You know, I being on deployments, I'll say that living here in the United States, man, we are blessed, incredibly blessed. When you come back from 9 months, a year of being overseas, and you see how everyone else in the world is living, from the Middle East to Afghanistan, Iraq, Pacific, there's nothing to say other than you're blessed. But to your gentleman's points about immigration, one of the other things I have is a podcast, a weekly podcast called The Second Act, where we talk to individuals who have brought themselves out of addiction or had to reinvent their life because of something traumatic, or have just stepped outside of a role such as, leaving Wall Street and becoming an entrepreneur. And there's a gentleman that comes out of Maryland. His name is Maurice Philogene. And he was a police officer for 15 years. He was in the Air Force for 22 years. Came from Haiti, and didn't have the American dream when he came over here, but now is providing learning that lifts by teaching those around him how to invest in real estate and grow their net worth and become who they wanted to be, and that they can still achieve their dreams. It just may look a little later in life, but he's teaching them something that, his students think, I never could have achieved this without you coming along and helping me out. And then another individual that we interviewed from Missouri, he was an immigrant from Ukraine, came over at 3 years old, and started learning construction with his father. And he then transitioned on to working on RVs and campers out of his mother's garage, just doing little odd jobs here and there, fixing the water leaks and getting them ready for winter. He now has $1 billion business making overland vehicles and RVs and kitting out Sprinter vans. I mean, talk about initiative and grit and determination. I mean, that to me is a success story.
And the thing that I would say that's unique about our country, the free markets, the ability to start a business with an idea and working out of your garage, and all these stories that we have from our states that we want to tell. In other countries, it's not so easy. It's more of a class system. You can't really break out of who your parents are. And that's what our founding fathers were so brilliant at saying, hey, we're not necessarily going to talk about the monarch or the king, and we think we are a people that can pull ourselves up by the bootstrap. And it's just amazing what the innovation that's come from the United States of America, and I love telling those stories. We've got a few more questions here, but I also wanted to give our governors a chance to ask some questions. If you guys have any questions you want for our panel here. And while you're thinking about those, so back to like a teacher, a mentor, a coach. Is there anybody that you can point back to that you really that kind of changed the trajectory? I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about it, but you go a little bit deeper and think back to that teacher that inspired you. And I'll tell you, my Secretary of Veterans Affairs in Oklahoma, great guy. His name's John Nash, and he tells a story that's so inspiring. He was had a single mom and grew up really, really poor, and had zero self-confidence. He's in 5th grade, and they had a substitute teacher one day. And they're calling the name call, the roll call, and she said, John Nash. And he said, he raised his hand as a little boy, said, here I am. And she said, wow, that sounds like a future president's name. And he said that one comment by his teacher totally changed his perspective of who he was. And then after he became the secretary, and he's had a great career, he went back and found that teacher that had inspired him and just shared that story with her. And I just love those little moments when, and you never know, that's why I love being governor. I love meeting with little 8th graders and 5th grade classes. And my question I always ask the young people, I said, which one of you is going to be governor when you grow up? And 2 or 3 will raise their hand and they'll point at somebody. And I know in 20 years, 30 years, one of those little boys or girls is going to come up to me and going to show a picture that they had. And same thing happened to me when I became governor. I showed Governor Keating. I stood in line to get my picture with him when I was in college. And so I showed this picture of Kevin stood in college with Governor Keating. And anyway, so I just love inspiring those young people and what's possible. Is there a memory that you guys have about somebody that really was inspiring to you?
Well, when I went to graduate school, before I did that, I was in law school for a week. And I decided that being an attorney was not a good idea for me, maybe for other people, but it did not fit my mindset. So there was a gentleman, his name was Morris Wiedenbaum, and actually he was Ronald Reagan's chief economic advisor when President Reagan was elected as president. So, and I had the opportunity to work with him. So this guy really took the time out with me because I was so undecided about what I wanted to do to help direct me, to that point where, and I had to make some quick decisions, within a week. And so he really took the time to help me. And for several years, we remained friends. He's gone now, and would always follow through. He's a very smart guy, very wise, and just would follow through. And we kept track of each other. We remained friends, so that was really significant. We're up here and we're talking about complicated issues of immigration, but I do just have one thing, if I could say this, because I work so closely with the military and veteran community. So at the organizations that I'm so deeply involved in, one of the things that we do is we build homes, smart homes all over the country for men and women that are severely disabled. We do it mainly for post 9/11 people, but we also do a lot of major remodeling. Doesn't matter what era you were in, Vietnam, Korean, World War II. We were discussing this earlier, so I got to say this. When we build those homes, they're expensive. Building a house in Chevy Chase, Maryland, just the property alone is expensive. And even though we get a lot of in-kind services where people donate things, it's expensive. If you're governor of a state here, and you do not have an exemption for men and women who have served in the military or who are first responders and who have a majority of full disability, they got hurt on the job, at least start from there, please consider implementing legislation, like so many other states do, to exempt that person who sacrificed for our country, whether it was overseas or here in the United States, as a first responder, to give them an exemption on property tax. So when we build a house for these men and women, especially, and other people, that sometimes that is the difference between them being able to afford to live in that house or not. So,
good.
So that's my discussion.
So Governor Polis, he's got a great American dream story too, and Governor Polis.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, started companies and schools. Both for all three of you, military service was part of your experience, led you to where you are. Obviously, here we have governors before us. What type of things do you think governors can and should do to lean into encouraging entrepreneurism and innovation and excellence and all these things that you're talking about in ways that for you, the military work, that's not going to happen for everybody. Not everybody's going to join the military. But what are some of the things that states should be looking at to kind of be able to provide a meaningful experience that helps young people live their dreams?
I can, I remember when I was running for governor, I had people who I served with in Afghanistan who came and campaigned on my behalf. And, many of them were not Marylanders. Many of them were not Democrats, but they were literally just coming and door knocking on my behalf and just telling people, I just want to tell you about the guy that I served with. And it was one of these things that really helped us to understand and see firsthand just the power of service. That the people who you serve with, those are going to be your brothers and sisters for life. And, one of the first things that we did when we came on board, we actually, in fact, the first bill that I introduced when I became the governor, the first bill that was, that I testified on behalf of and was very proud to sign was something called the SERVE Act of 2023, which made Maryland now the first state in the country that now offers a service year option for all of our high school graduates. So every high school graduate has a chance to do a year of service to the state of Maryland. And they can choose however they want to do it. If they want to work in the environment, if they want to work serving veterans, if they want to work serving young people, if they want to serve older adults, if they want to work with animals, it is completely their choice. The only thing we tell them is, tell us what makes your heart beat a little bit faster. And let's give you a pathway to go do it. And the thing that we have now found, we've now had thousands of these young people go through this platform already in just the 2.5 years that our administration's been on board. But it has been a remarkable workforce development tool, where just like you're watching not just private sector, nonprofit sector, who are all taking on these young people, and so they're really using it as a workforce development tool for them. That it has been fantastic in terms of showing how you can get people into a workforce, how, I'm a big believer in an earned financial cushion. If you're willing to do the work, then you should be compensated for the work that you're doing. But the third thing was that in this time of this political divisiveness and political vitriol, that service will save us. Service is the antidote. Because, we are watching how these young people who come from completely different parts of the state, completely different backgrounds, who are working on a project together in a way that they're now getting to know each other that they never would have gotten to know each other. The same reason where I would have never had a reason to go to Columbus, Georgia, or Fayetteville, or Fort Leonard Wood, or Fort Lewis. But the military gave me not just an appreciation for service, but it introduced me to a whole new group of new family members that I now have and I will lean on for the rest of my life, and they know they can lean on me for the rest of their life. So I love the idea that the earlier we can expose young people to be part of something bigger than themselves, the earlier we can give young people the opportunity to find that thing that breaks your heart. Because the thing that breaks your heart is probably breaking the world's heart too. Go fix it and go work together to go address it. That it's been a remarkable tool for our state, and I'm just a big believer that service is sticky, and that especially in this time, that service will save us.
I would like to look. You're talking about different things. So I'm a believer. Robert Frost said, "All tides lift all boats." So I look at. I'm not very much a political person. I'm a person of practicality, and I like solutions. So when I look at certain things, I think that educating everybody, no matter what their social economic situation is, where they grow up, is pivotal to the future of our country. I will never understand the property tax situation in this country, where in certain jurisdictions, the tax base is one thing of people that are very well-to-do and not so much in other areas. And there is a discrepancy on the opportunity of education. And I really believe this economically in a free enterprise system, that if we are able to provide the same educational opportunities everywhere, rural, in the urban centers, in the counties, then we will, not only will the individual benefit and be able to realize the American dream, but we as a society will benefit as well. And so I would like to see more independence. I would also like to see, I'm just talking personally, that if you're in a state and you have a certain need, and one of the needs, I think, throughout the United States, there is a lack of housing that's going on in this country. So I feel like a practical, one of the solutions is to have free enterprise zones where you give tax exemptions people who are willing to take the risk in building homes, because I'm a big believer in the central bank and how they balance out things that are in your CPI index, et cetera, to try to keep the cost level as much as you can. But one of the things is that if you're able to provide incentives for people to build homes and to be innovative in the homes that they're building, and to be able to reduce down the cost of those homes by doing that, and doing something like what we have done, in the mortgage industries, that where if it's your first home, et cetera, that there is some type of vehicle as far as a first-time mortgage to drive down the interest rates, so a younger family can enter in, to their first house. So, I also believe that giving tax incentives to people that build, helping people, especially as they're entering into their first house, can really help lift those boats, and especially to provide the same access to education for everybody in this country. So,
yeah, it's a huge deal. Governor Polis led on that last year. So last question, I'll give you each about 30 seconds. The stats are, about 50% of the young people are growing up thinking that maybe the American dream is out of reach for them. It's the housing cost. Can I give my family, can I have a better life than my parents? And what would you say to that generation that's saying, hey, I'm just not sure if I'm going to be able to achieve my American dream. It just feels like it's out of reach for me. What would you say?
Well, it's a great question, as I've got a 13-year-old and 9-year-old boys that are looking at me wondering about their future, and I don't think traditional education is for one of them, and I think the other one's going to do just fine. But I would encourage them that the answer to your question is who you surround yourself with, and who you listen to, because we all have the people that say you can or you can't. And if you give that time to marinate, you may not be able to overcome. And for me, my story is all about the people that spoke into it, and the people I chose to listen to, and the people that I surrounded myself with. And I was very fortunate. Never in my wildest dreams would I think a kid that failed almost every year of math would be flying the president for 2 administrations. They did give me an extra year there because I was slow at some stuff, but spent 5 years doing that, and I never thought that would be possible. So, when I'm able to look at my boys and say, if the common answer is if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I would say if you think you can't, go find somebody that thinks you can, and listen to them, and ask them the hard questions, and surround yourself with those people.
Jim?
Well, I have this deal, especially as we're giving back. I'm not delusional. I'm a realist, and that so many people have so many challenges, and and their families, whether it's an illness that they're dealing with, a child that maybe has severe learning disabilities. I mean, there's so many challenges that people have in life. So my deal is you win if you can have more good days than bad days. And my deal is that, and somebody once told me, sometimes you'll lose and you'll lose and you'll lose until you win. Whether it's a sports team and you're trying to build a better team, you know, in professional sports, or you're in a business, that you will lose, but you have to keep on going until you win. But my deal is this: don't give up. There are people that really care on all sides of the aisles, wherever your background is, and that is to lift everybody up, to lift them up. And I think that probably everybody in this room has a commonality of where we want to do good. As John Wesley said as a theologian, we want to do good, and we want to do better, and we want to lift up people. And especially if somebody is having a tough moment, whether it's a veteran or a first responder that has invisible wounds, somebody that has challenges and they're suffering from depression for whatever the reason it is that, you know, we need to show those people, everybody, grace and compassion and empathy, and help lift them up to do better.
So good, so good. And Wes, what do you say to that generation that may think that the American dream is out of reach?
Yeah, first, I love both the advice that you all given. And one is, I think that for the many people that do feel disillusioned right now, I think there's a reason they do. Because I think for a lot of people, they do feel like the American dream is out of reach, or the American dream was never real for them. And I think we have to be honest about that. That the level of frustration and disillusionment that a lot of people do feel, it's justified. I think that the thing we have to remind them, though, is that the American journey has never been a smooth one. It's never been a steady line. It's been ebbs and flows. That the history of this country is remarkable, and it's been remarkably uneven. But I think the thing to remember is that as difficult as it might feel right now, understand and continue to remember the history of this country. That we were never promised simple. We were promised salvation, right? We were never promised easy, we were promised glory. And that the reason that we are here right now is because there were people who believed in us and believed in the hope of this country and believed that this country is a really unique experiment. And that takes continued work and continued massaging and continued focus. And the reason we're here is because the people who came before us did not just pack up or curl up in a fetal position and say this is too tough. Mm-hmm. They believed in the future and they fought for it. And so the thing that I would say is that none of this is going to be simple. It's not going to be easy, but glory is worth it. And that's why we keep on putting in the work.
Thank you. I am so excited. I am so excited to go on the journey with all my fellow governors over this next year as we promote the American dream. And now turn your attentions to the screen.
The American dream didn't begin with power or privilege. It began with belief. Belief that freedom could birth opportunity, that hard work could shape destiny, that a person, no matter their beginnings, could rise. At our best, we've been a nation fueled not by fear, but by hope, not by guarantees, but by determination. And over again, we've risen. Because throughout our history, no matter the challenge, Americans didn't wait for a better tomorrow. They rolled up their sleeves and they built it themselves. But dreams don't live in history books or political agendas. They live in people. People willing to build, to risk, and to lead. It's the uncommon ideas of ordinary people that have sparked revolutions, launched businesses, built communities, created jobs, and changed the world. From dirt roads to rocket science, from dorm rooms to tech giants, the American dream isn't a place, it's a spirit of resolve, of grit, of never settle, never stop, and never give up. For some, the American dream is still alive, in basement startups and in neighborhood shops, in parents raising kids with purpose, and in teachers fanning the spark of potential. Yet for many, the dream feels distant. Costs are rising, trust is falling, too many doors close before they're ever opened. What once felt within reach now feels uncertain. Every generation has its moment, and this one is ours, to widen the path for more people in more places than ever before. That means expanding access to energy and modernizing the systems that make progress possible. It means reimagining education to meet the needs and potentials of every kind of learner. And it means creating jobs and opportunities for the innovators, the doers, and the builders who, if given their shot, they will shape our tomorrow. This is our charge, and this is our chance. Together, we can reignite the American dream for everyone, everywhere.
Our summer meeting is concluded.